the Pet Care Innovation Prize Startup Series, which is presented by the Pet Care Innovation Prize, which in itself is powered by Nestle Purina Pet Care, and it's also presented by PetAge, our friends at PetAge. The purpose of this series is to help people be better pet entrepreneurs. The Pet Care Innovation Prize sponsors this and hosts this because we run a competition to actually identify early stage pet care companies that need a little bit of cash and recognition and access to some expertise to start and grow their business. We're also presented by PetAge. PetAge is a great resource to, if you're trying to find out what's going on in the industry, to check them out and see who's out there. And they also provide some great content for entrepreneurs. This session is being recorded. So the a video recording of it will be available on the Pet Care Innovation Prize website within the next day or so. It's petcareinnovationprize.com, as well as the slides for both of our presenters today. I'm going to get right into it, but we have two great presenters today that are going to help us talk about the topic of training and how to use that to scale a pet food or treat startup. Just as a really short matter of introduction, Joe is going to start us. Joe is with Nestle Purina Pet Care. Even though they're a huge company and you would think they have all the resources in the world, excuse me, they still need to lean on other people, and he's going to explain why, and those things really, the whys for them apply to startups as well. And then we're going to hear from Will Madden of Whole Brain Consulting, and Will is a consultant that helps people scale things up and find co-manufacturing and things. So we're going to get kind of the strategy and then some tactics out of it. There's a text box down to should be on your lower left where you can type in a question. And we'd love to take some questions, but we're going to start with Joe. And Joe, Joe is, as I said, with Nestle Purina Pet Care, and it is his job to work with co-manufacturers and outside resources. And Joe has graciously agreed to help us understand this area. But without any further ado, Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Dan. And for those that are on the call, I appreciate you being here. If you have any questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to type those in. But I have 3 slides, and each of those are covering an area that I'll go through. And first one is reasons for co-manufacturing, and then I'll cover just what I consider some key components if you decide to third-party manufacturing or co-manufacturing, and then the third slide with just some other considerations to think of as you go down that path.
Joe, before you get started, just got a comment that you're a little quiet. Can you speak up?
Sure, absolutely. I'll move my mic.
Oh, there you go. Wonderful, thanks.
Okay. These things can be sensitive, yeah. So reasons to co-manufacture, yes, from both a large manufacturer like ourselves and startups, as you can see from this slide, there are many reasons that companies co-manufacture. Maybe you're small, you're testing something out, doing something regionally. There's capital investment involved that maybe is not involved if you go to a third-party manufacturer. And sometimes we produce products internally, and then sort of an end of life cycle for a product. And if something has to get pushed out because of capacity issues, it's usually those products that get pushed out to third-party manufacturing for a period of time before maybe you even discontinue it. But primarily, it's capability and capacity, the 2 main, the ones that I have underlined there. And some of these things will come into play for you as well, but really for a startup, you're going to be more concerned with building your brand, and you'll want to focus on that as a primary consideration, I am sure. Um, in regards to self-producing, you know, it's really a matter of risk and capital cost on your end, whether you're willing and able to take on that risk, and self-manufacture. You can do self-manufacturing for a period of time, potentially at a very low cost, um, but there's some limitations to that, it probably in regards to volume, and then in regards to your distribution, not only distribution in volume, but distribution as in large retailers, um, taking a product that's made in a small facility that maybe doesn't have all of the certifications that they require, and that leads into the regulatory and compliance area. If you self-manufacture, there's things like FSMA, which is out there, FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act, that requires um, uh, and carries with it a lot of hurdles when it comes to self-manufacture and making sure that you comply with all of these requirements. Um, in those requirements, there's even categories of businesses in regards to, you're a small business, maybe less than 500 employees, which is really an actual category within the FSMA rules. And then there's another category called very small businesses, which is less than $1 million in sales. These requirements are still there for those size companies, but they may be a little different in regards to uh, level of compliance that you have to have. Certainly, there's a difference in the rollout of these requirements and the timing of when you would be required to do and have things in place to comply with the Food Safety Modernization Act. I think September 2018 is actually a date that those small companies have to comply. And then there's the GFSI, or Global Food Safety Initiative, which large retailers like Walmart, Target, you name it, require these certifications, certain certifications to um, comply with the Global Food Safety Initiative. So those are some hurdles that you need to come over. There's a lot of manufacturers out there that already have processing equipment and capabilities for you, likely for you to manufacture your product, and would certainly have these certifications if they're making products and distributing to those larger retailers. Um, so as we
So
move on,
Joe, not that I expect you to be an expert for everybody, but
sure.
some of the people that might be listening to this now or watching the video later might wonder, well, when do those kinds of certification things come into play? Like, I've been making this and selling this in my neighborhood, and when do I actually have to start caring about regulatory kinds of things as they relate to manufacturing? Do you have a sense that really once you start selling through a channel, what does that look like? Do you know?
It, part of it is a little bit risk. You can take the risk of not having certain certifications because you're a small company. Maybe you'll fly under the radar, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, and not be noticed.
Mm-hmm.
But the risk is, if your product does get picked up and doesn't have the certifications, or you don't comply, your facility doesn't comply with the FSMA requirements, Food Safety Modernization Act, it'll kill your brand. That's the
Right.
risk.
So
As far as
it'll shut
timing,
you down. You
there's
might
specific
succeed and then
rules.
shut you down.
Well,
Yes,
also it's
yes.
not just having the certifications, what the certifications mean. Um, nobody wants to have a product out there in the stream of supply that's not safe for consumption. And the point of these certifications, and the reason why GFSI came up, was to ensure just that. So it's not just that if you want to be in any of the top 800 retailers in the world, you have to comply. It's that you want to make sure that you put a safe product out there in the food stream.
So great, thanks.
Absolutely.
I think just great to clarify that for people, because I think some people are trying to figure out at what point do they become a business, and what point, what point do they stop being a hobby or a passion, and what point do they become a business? And I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks. Keep going, Joe.
Yeah, sure. So my second slide is really just some key components. You want to give some consideration to your organizational structure, roles and responsibilities as you go to a co-manufacturer. Organizational structure, you're a small company, probably don't have to worry about that, but roles and responsibilities are still important. Even if there's just two people, it's important to identify who's taking the lead with communication with the co-man, communication with your suppliers, whether it's packaging or raw material suppliers. And then you have the other side, right? The sales side, who's taking the lead on the broker, the retailer, and who's playing the backup role on those, just so communication is clear and you don't run into issues with that. Again, just a consideration. On the right side here, I call these more executional components. I'll fly through these just for the sake of time, but it's just knowing on the sourcing side, is your co-manufacturer going to be doing all the sourcing? Are you going to be doing the sourcing? What's the difference in the roles that you're playing versus the co-man when it comes to purchasing, packaging, and so forth? Evaluation of the co-man in regards to make sure they're a right fit, both philosophy and interest, and I have innovation down here on that column as well. Do they have the innovation tools that you might need with your product? Communication, go back to that. That's key. Are you on the same page with the co-man? Do you get a good sense and a feel for how you fit with them and how you communicate with them? And then over time, just relationship building is key. A lot of these, or with me, a lot of these agreements are a little more of a handshake in some ways, not so buttoned up from a contractual standpoint. So if that's the case, and I wouldn't recommend that, but if that's the case, relationship building is key. And then really performance management, obviously quality is important, but the other thing that can kill your brand is if they're not delivering for you on time, and you miss some shipments. You're a small company, generally only dealing with maybe a couple of retailers, maybe heavy on the side of one retailer or two. And if you miss some shipments and you irritate that retailer, I've seen that kill brands. So just some considerations there. And the next slide, more considerations, really know your needs from what you're looking for in a co-manufacturer, or what I refer to sometimes as a partner, and what your needs are from a product. Do you need technical, a lot of packaging expertise? Are you going to need a lot of innovation? Do they have prototyping capability? Do they have a development lab? Is location important, for distribution and the cost of the product? On the product side, do you have IP to protect out for a patent? Who's going to own the formula? Those type of things you want to make sure that you have the appropriate agreement on. And then back to some of the certifications. Do they have the certifications you need so that you can distribute the product where you need to distribute it? And is there a need for exclusivity? That's a big one. A lot of times co-manufacturers are looking for them to be the exclusive producer. That may or may not make sense to you. Will might get into that a little bit. And then, of course, you might want them to not produce any product like this for any other company and have them exclusive to you. So those are just some important considerations. So there's a lot more I can say about this. I think we can leave that for questions. And
one question that's already come up is, Joe, is how long is a contract manufacturing relationship, is that typically something that you're committing to a period of time, or do you you want that to last a long time, or are they sometimes really tactical and you do it for just a few quarters or just a year? How long is there kind of a time horizon that people think about with this? Or is that flexible depending on your needs?
Yeah, it's flexible. I mean, you could have an agreement for the following year and it just continues to renew. Has some clauses in there that allows you or the co-man to, cancel, but you want to do that in a way that gives you time to make new arrangements. Or if there's capital involved or exclusivity, things like that would push that agreement to a term agreement. If company to produce your product for a long term, there's no problem with 3 or 5 year type of agreement.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, so you're going to stay on here, and I know that you've got a lot of direct experience that is going to help, but we're now going to, you've kind of set the table for why anybody would want to do this, and now we're going to get into to Will, and Will is going to talk through specifically, give you a little bit of background on himself for everybody in the audience so you understand his point of view, but he's also going to then give some specific case studies on how early stage companies have done this and some of the things they've encountered along the way, and then we'll open it up to some questions about how this works. But so Will, if you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Joe. I run a outsourced operations firm. We have 17 people. We operate in 3 countries, US, Israel, and Jordan. Our primary focus is food and beverage for human consumption. We do have a specialist on the team that handles pet products. Again, only in the food space, none of the toys or clothing or anything of that nature. We've been in business roughly about 7 years now. When it comes to co-man contracts, we do roughly 100 of them a year that we negotiate on behalf of our clients, as well as manage complete supply chain solutions. The examples that I'm putting you through, what we're doing is we're using a food-based example, but then we're going to see how it applies to your business and how the issues that they focus easily transfer over to issues that you'll face. So with that, I'll take it away. Yay, it made it work. All right. So this is our logo. This is a little bit about me. It's why I'm wonderful. Got to have the brag page, right? I actually wrote a book that somebody other than my mother has bought, which is Separating the Con Man from the Co-Man. What it focuses around is selecting the right contract manufacturer for your business and the different pitfalls that you could fall into using real life examples. The original version of the book was so boring, I didn't even want to reread it. So we actually put in some funny stories, and a bunch of clients say that it's like, where's Waldo for them? They're like, we were page 43 when you got us, right? I'm like, and 62 and 41. So here's an example of some of the companies that we work with. As you can tell, it's everything from Fortune 500s to startups to private equity firms. So pretty much what anybody uses us. And how are innovative tech companies bridging the gap? Go.
Whoop, you jumped ahead a bunch.
I know, I was sitting there, I was like, wow, I thought I had case studies in there. So we had a client who was a relatively small company, they were roughly $1 million in revenue, that got taken nationwide by Starbucks. So they went from, $500,000 to about a $7 million business overnight. They were co-packed, but before they went into Starbucks, they didn't bother checking off with their co-packer on what's your capacity fulfillment rates, how fast can you do it, all of those type of things. They just went into Starbucks, figured it'd be a 6-month rollout. And the only time Starbucks ever been quick in their life happened to be these poor guys, and next thing they know, they're going nationwide in 40 DCs. So they were 2 people under 30, came to us and said, dude, we're lost. What do we do? Well, you're saying so what we did is we went through and figured out what their capacity was. We moved the co-packer to continental shifts. We just basically redid their whole supply chain within 30 days. We set up a secondary manufacturer overseas. We started getting containers on the water. We applied quality QC food safety people to the project. They went in, wrote specs, because this company didn't even have clear defined specs for their products. So we basically buttoned all that up, took their suppliers from, John's House of Flour at the end of the block to ADM. Really buttoned all their systems up in a very short period of time. And I know you guys are sitting there thinking, well, great, this is fantastic, but what does it have to do with pets? Well, here's the thing. You can sell your product to neighborhood stores, but all of us in the business have a goal of national retailers. And in this space, the national retailers are very dominant. And if they take you chain wide and you don't have this together, you're going to wind up in your version of the issue that this client felt. So what you have to do is, as you're qualifying your co-packer, you want to make sure that they're the right size for you now, but know how much they can grow with you. Because the co-man who's right for you today as a small business is not necessarily the co-man that you're going to be with long term. So, there's compromises that you've made and they've made, and as your business grows, you're not able to make certain compromises anymore. You need to be more competitive on your pricing so you can promote at retail. Different things like that start taking effect on your business. So what we like clients to think about is, all right, I'm making this product. Is the way my co-man making it something that's scalable? If they're hand mixing it and, you're deciding the dryness by touch, and whether it's been in a dehydrator long enough, that's not a scalable solution. And if you plan to just be with small retailers, you might be able to live with that solution because you can be there on a regular basis. But if you're planning to have something that you're going to grow, you're going to have to figure all that out. And the best thing that you can do is figure that out now at the earlier stage. When you bring somebody like me in to clean up a mess that big, is extremely expensive. And at the same time, you're cutting your customers' orders all the way through the mess. So make sure that you think about, is this the right partner for the short term and the long term? And it's not bad if they're just a partner for the short term, but you have to always have an eye on, all right, where's my long term?
So, and we'll Stan and keen on something that Joe said too. This, you might be doing co-manufacturing for the flexibility purposes while you sort things out. There's a lot of reasons to do it, but what you're saying is you're in order, this example, using Starbucks, but this could just as easily be, PetSmart, Pet Supplies, whoever it is, you have this challenge that when you commit to selling to a customer, you have to fulfill, and you have to be able to honor the commitment that you've made if you're going to keep growing. So what you're saying is that this having the right understanding of what you're doing up front gives you choices as you move on, so that you can do these things, but But what you were just talking about, having this kind of vision in place, is really about being ready to evolve quickly. Did I kind of capture what you were trying to say there?
Correct.
Cool. So this doesn't just
100%
apply.
correct.
This applies to everybody, whether you're in one store and you want to get to 3, or whether you are in one store and you want to get to 30,000.
Yeah, I mean, the number one, there's the top 3 issues that customers face as they grow is, number one, access to capital. They don't have enough to finance the growth that they're experiencing. Number 2 is not having vision on how they're going to grow. And then number 3 is management staff not realizing what it is they don't know, and not having the right talent brought in when it's needed.
Do you have a sense with somebody like this, like if a Starbucks or whoever it is in the pet world, if they were to say, okay, so we want to do this, and if they were to hiccup and say, well, we can't do it for 6 months, would that deal go away?
That would be ideal if they said they can't do it for 6 months, because you have time to get their projections together, where they're going to ship, whatever store movements are, what you're going to guess your basement of movements off of. That would be ideal if they told you they couldn't do it for 6 months. But I have a story from back when I worked at Nestle. I was in calling on the candy buyer. The beverage buyer came in and was very upset with International Delights, and I happened to work for Nestle at the time. And he asked about Coffee Mate, and we had just set up the internet 20 years ago to where I could log in and check on pricing. I sold 800 pallets because I happened to be in the candy buyer's office when he was upset with International Delights. So
Wow.
you don't always get those nice notices of bills. Well, and there's a lot of smaller companies that are committing to large orders, and they're unable to fulfill. So if you're his second choice, or if he finds himself with an immediate gap, there is a possibility that you're the guy they're going to say, we need to fill this gap with.
Wow. How does that work with, so it's because the buyer is typically buying for a category, right? So if you're coming in, if you're a startup and you have 2 or 3 products in a category, are they coming back and asking for volume, or are they suddenly asking for additional SKUs, or do they do both of those things? So how much, Joe talked a little bit about innovation capability. How much should you be prepared with your co-manufacturing to develop another product to meet that retailer need?
Well, whenever you start working with someone, you should understand what their capabilities are and what they view as their capabilities and what's truly in their wheelhouse. And in doing so, when you have those conversations with retailers and they say, can we do this? Could we do that? Could I have it in a stand-up rather than a pouch? Can I have it in a bulk format? You're able to answer those questions intelligently and not say yes and then go back and figure it out. So really, whoever your partner is, you should have a clear understanding of what their capabilities are and what their business desires are. Some companies don't want to get bigger than 25 million in sales. We've had experience where clients have been asked to find secondary manufacturers because we were becoming too much business for them. Which is counterintuitive, but they never want to be beholden to anyone. So, you have to understand who it is that you're partnering with. So it's like anything in life. I mean, it's like when you date somebody, you really want to know about them if you're going to make it a long-term success.
Right. It's not just about whether you're available for dinner and you like Italian food next Wednesday. It's, should we be doing this at all?
Yeah. Well, and know whether it's a temporary relationship or if it's a long-term relationship, and how will we grow together in the future?
So these aren't, you guys have both done this, Joe, and I have not, and so I'm not one of our startups, but this is not I'm going to send you a spec sheet and you're going to give back a quote, and then it's a transaction like, buying you know, something on Amazon. I mean, you've got to do some work and you've got to maintain the relationship and you've really got to be thinking about how it's evolving. So you have to trust these people is what you're saying.
You're trusting them with your brand.
Cool.
I mean, they're the last line of defense on the reputation of your brand.
Cool. Great. Well, keep going with your case studies. This is good stuff. And by the way, for people listening, if you have questions, please enter your questions.
And it's a part of your...
Go ahead, Joe. I cut you off.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, I was just going to say it's a part of your, it should be a part of your business plan, you know? So I think some of the things Will was talking about are referencing how does it fit into your strategy? How does this co-man and the supply and supply chain, the potential of the growth fit into your, you know, into your strategy and your business plan. So yeah, it becomes a large part of your business plan and your execution and your growth. And it can ruin various parts of that if it's not managed. Yeah.
All right. So you could replace who you buy your printer paper from, but you can't. This is something much more mission critical.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not so quickly it's not as simple as turning a switch on. Exactly.
And what's the reality? I mean, like how many, you know, are there hundreds of co-manufacturing kinds of people that you could tap? Are there thousands or are there dozens? I mean, is it the reality that there's a limited number of these people?
I mean, there's a lot more than I'm aware of, and I'm aware of a lot. So it's quite a large number. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you say, Will?
Yeah, in the food co-man space, there's approximately 10,000 contract manufacturers that are operating at any particular time greater than $10 million in revenue. So there's a lot of them. Yeah. Now, the issue that you have with a lot of food co-man... go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was cutting you off.
Oh, no. So the issue that you have with a lot of food co-man is that they don't want pet products coming out of their human grade consumption plants. So you have to be a bit creative at times to get around that natural apprehension. You know, if you're Karina coming in and you want a, you know, dog cookie, it's a little bit different than, you know, Samantha's dog treats coming in asking for a dog cookie. You know, so we've gotten creative where we've had the base product manufactured at one location that was a human grade facility and labeled, you know, product X, and then shipped to a organization that just packages products. They're actually called co-packers versus contract manufacturers, where to have the product packaged simply because there were so many food plants that didn't want animal products in their facilities. We had to get creative with a few of them. Now, what we've noticed is as those businesses grow, they get over the fact that it's, you know, Nancy's dog treats. And when they realize we're doing $1 million a year worth of treats, how much are we losing by not packaging these treats? They kind of get over those issues that they have. But we've had that issue quite a few times when we worked on pet products and had to get very creative. As nice as pet stuff just requires a FDA facility, and in general, the bee manufacturing location we have classified as further processing, so it's the only one that requires the pet food registration or certificate. So we've been able to get through some of those hurdles.
We'll talk a little bit about this next case study you have here.
Sure. So this case study was really interesting, and it applies to the pet category pretty dramatically. What it was a supply chain project that we had. We took over a company's entire operations side of their business. And what we did is when we looked at it, we realized their quality was inconsistent. Their raw material costs were atrocious. Their co-man couldn't deliver to save his life. Working capital, which is a big concern, was a complete disaster. So what we did is we took a look at the business as a whole, and was a nut business. So first thing we did was actually pull together how many nuts they were purchasing, consolidated the supplier base from 6 to 2. We looked at their contract manufacturers and what the performance issues were, and we kept 1, eliminated 2, and then queued up 2 additional ones. And in doing that, what we also did is we said, we're no longer, what the client was doing was buying all the raw materials, sending it to the co-man, and having it converted by the co-man, which in theory sounds good if you have it set up 100% correct. They didn't. So what was happening is product was getting lost, product was being used on other people's, raw materials were getting lost, raw material being used on other people's products. There was no incentive to keep waste under control of the co-man. So as we brought the other 2 new co-men, we said that it had to be a fully transparent pricing arrangement where we have to approve the suppliers, but so does the co-man. And the co-man has to purchase the suppliers. We give them agreed upon waste level to stay with under. And if they stayed under that, whatever extra they made by curtailing their waste was theirs to keep. If they went over it, well, it wasn't on us. So we de-risked a lot of the business. And in doing so, we found some substantial savings. The other thing that we did is we created master contracts for the raw materials. So we would go to Cairo Nut and say, I want to contract £1 million. And then the 3 contractors would buy off of that Cairo Nut contract. What that allowed us to do is, as we ran into issues later on in the year with nut availability, we were able to dictate who was getting filled by the contract and who wasn't. So it allowed us to have control over our own destinies there. It also allowed us to be one great big buy. The new contracts, what we did is we looked at what were the major factors to lead time, and most of it is raw material availability. So we put in the contract that we would guarantee raw materials up to 90 days, provided they maintained a target inventory of 45. Another co-man, we actually put in a min-max program, which is what we said is at any given point, they have X number of cases on the, and we will guarantee between X and Y in the event there's a discontinuation or anything. We'll guarantee that we'll take those cases. What it allowed the manufacturer to do then was optimize their production. So whenever they had a down day, they would just produce our product and stick it in inventory. Both parties found a lot of value in that. They liked the flexibility. We liked the on-demand nature and not having to pay for outside storage for a lot of our products. Where this helps smaller brands in the pet food category is you have to have clear specs for your raw materials. So, this is the meat, this percentage fat, moisture, everything like that. And you have to have the co-packer sign off on that spec. Your goal as a small brand, your number one as a small brand is working capital. A manufacturer goes to the bank to get their money. A small brand has to sell equity to get their money. So it's a lot cheaper for them to get money than it is for you. So what you try and do is have it where you don't buy the raw materials, yet you have as much influence as possible on where the raw materials are being purchased and what the specifications for the raw materials are that are being purchased. But you try and get that off of your balance sheet. Co-men have been very receptive to this. Some of them have added purchasing fees and things like that. But when you look at your true cost of capital, even if there is a minor purchasing fee, it's a substantial savings to you for the overall value of your business. So that's the number that addresses the number two area where companies go out of business is running out of capital by transference of, $250,000 worth of working capital from our balance sheets to our co-packers. That allowed $250,000 more for promotion, for distribution drives, for growth, bonuses, for everything.
Well, and then also that working capital for a startup is their overhead for their sales staff and everything else too. And so we see this with the Pet Care Innovation Prize, that companies are really stuck by, it's costing us this much to produce. If I could get to this kind of volume, then my cost of production would go down, like packaging, if I can buy in that volume, or any of the things I need to buy in that volume go down, but I don't have enough capital to get to that point to actually be able to tap those dollars to use those to grow more. And so managing that capital is critical. What, Joe, Will, these have been two great case studies. And Joe and Will, what are the, when you meet people, while we wait for a couple more questions here, while you guys meet people, what are the typical questions that somebody that's just kind of new to this ask you? Do they go from extremely specific or, very, very naive? Tell me a little bit about some of the questions you've heard. We'll treat this a little bit like a kind of an FAQ section. So what do people ask you that you wish you could tell people without even having to ask? Maybe Joe, if you have, when you work with either a brand manager or a product manager within the large organization, or you meet people outside, what are the big questions that come up?
In regard just a co-manufacturer, or what?
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking for the context.
Yeah. So just if you do people really understand how co-manufacturing works and why it's a benefit to them, or are there what are the specific questions that somebody might have? Like, how do you, like, for example, how would they go about finding co-manufacturers? Is it you Google?
Yeah,
Google it?
I understand.
Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
Right,
I keep cutting you off.
understand. What I tell people, that's okay. What I tell folks in our marketing group, or anyone that's looking for a specific product, if it's something that we currently do, generally know where to go. We might not know 100% of, what who's out there, who's doing what, and you have to, get on the current state of who's doing those kind of products. Maybe you knew before or years ago, but if it's something that is new and different, a new form, something that we don't internally or don't currently do at all, then it's a lot more, takes a lot more time to identify the right companies that are doing that, and sometimes with today's new pet food products and new pet food forms, you get into some of what Will was talking about, which is food plants that you have to go to, because pet food plants that are doing these type of products, and then you run into some of those roadblocks sometimes in regards to companies that aren't willing to make, even though food grade FDA approved ingredients, they're not willing to put a pet food label on it, and generally that's either their internal philosophy, but most concern for their customers, or their customers' concerns.
So the perceptions
to
that
answer your question from another.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I think some of the concerns when whether it's marketing or even technical folks that haven't worked with a lot of co-manufacturers, that we run into is not when people don't haven't done any business or work with a co-manufacturer, the sense is, yeah, there's some switches to flip and pretty quick and easy. We touched on this a little bit, during this hour, and so it's not having the experience of working with a co-man makes people think that it's easy, switch on, switch off, when in fact, yeah, there's a lot of boxes to check and things to be, concerned with, and make sure that you cover off. And I think from what said, you can tell there's a need for the service that he provides to companies, because there's, you know, you don't, when you're a small company, you're concerned with building your brand, you may not have any experience. So it's easy to make a lot of.
Okay.
Yeah, my experience with smaller bids coming to us is I always ask them what's their process, and they give me what we call the easy bake oven version of the process. It's like, well, I mix this, not understanding what it is they're asking somebody to do. So is it pass-through ovens or rack oven? Is it, it's a dehydration? Is it a vacuum dehydration? What is your process? Is them not having that understanding. The other issue that I get is people coming in and say, well, my co-packer's charging $1 for this and I think it's expensive. I'm like, well, how many is he making at a time? What's going into it? I get with the bar category, paying $1.11 a bar, is that too expensive? I'm like, they're not even, they don't, our big thing is that smaller companies don't even know the right questions to ask. And don't really understand what goes into making the product. In my book, I advise everybody spend the first 6 months of your business in a commercial kitchen. Then you know how hard it is to actually make your product, and how you can have 12 people sitting around and only make 200 of something. They kind of get those. They then have that feel when they come to a co-man that they understand it not easy. A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll tell people, I'll say, all right, how much is it? Oh, it's $1. Well, how much of that is ingredients? 50 cents. Okay. How many are they making in a day? 2,000. I'm like, all right, so you're giving that guy $1,000 for his plant for the entire day, and all of his workers and his staff and his electricity and all of that. Does that sound too expensive to you? No, it doesn't. I'm like, exactly. Like, it's that imperfect information, not understanding what they're asking people to do. I mean, on our side, they think that it's 3 phone calls for us to find a co-packer. And when I tell them it's 3 to 6 months worth of work, they're just amazed.
Yeah.
It's like, I can find you someone in the morning to do just about any product. It doesn't mean it's going to be the right person to do the product, that you're going to have a good relationship, that things are going to work out. But I can find you somebody like anything.
So we've got maybe time for one more question here. What's a good example of, like, an entrepreneur that has an idea for a product? Maybe it's something that they've made, or an ingredient that they think that would be wonderful for, for with pet. So, like, people make it in their kitchen, and then they go to a commercial kitchen, and then they, and kind of go through that process that you just described of figuring out exactly what the process actually is, and then finding a co-manufacturer, and then scaling, maybe starting with one co-manufacturer and then figuring out how that works, and then revisiting it and seeing if you want to have some, a different approach, as you maybe expand territories and you want to have co-manufacturers in 2 different locations or whatever. Can you talk a little bit about, from that initial idea of, like, wow, the world needs this kind of treat and I'm the perfect person to make it happen? Can you talk a little bit about what that journey might be for that founder, Will, if you follow what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, most of our clients come to us with something that they believe is truly special and unique.
Mhm.
Uh, we see so many projects a year, I mean, probably 200, 250, that just about everything, we've seen somebody else who has the idea. My advice to people is never make anything in your kitchen. Don't ever do that. It's the most unfood safe scenario that you can have. Go to a reputable commercial kitchen in the area or incubator and try it there, because they'll at least have the minimums for food safety. So start off there. They're relatively cheap. You can rent them by the day. They'll have all the equipment that they need. Most of them will have suppliers to get raw materials from, stuff like that. So skip the making in your kitchen stage. Go right to a commercial kitchen. And then go out there and sell it. And what my advice is pick a few stores in this town, a few stores in the next town over, a few stores in the town after that. Try different price points to actually see, how your sales are in those different areas. Because people really won't understand their costs until they go to the co-packer. They'll try, but it'll be wrong. They'll forget to include themselves as a wage that needs to be paid. They'll forget storage, they'll forget transportation, they'll forget distributors, they'll forget all that. So first thing they need to see what the price point and how prices affect the sales of their products. And once they have that, then start seeing what your margin is. The rule of thumb for products is a minimum of 3 times cost. So when we bring the product out to a co-man, if it's retailing for $6, I can't buy it from the co-man for more than 2. So if somebody's out there and they have a fantastic product, but the market won't pay more than $1.50 for it, they don't have a product. We're not going to be able to have it made for the cost that they need for they have a business. So they can continue making it themselves and have it be a hobby, or it's just not worth doing. So that's my advice for small ones: is get out there, try it, try different price points, and see if you really have a market there, and then we'll blow it up.
So, thanks. One last question that came in. Joe, you're essentially an in-house version of Will for a big corporation. And not to minimize your role. I mean, I'm sure you provide a lot of expertise beyond the individual tactical things. But so, is this something that somebody needs to have internally? To have this expertise on co-manufacturing, or working with a consultant like you, Will. Is this a cost of doing business, and you need to have this capability, and or is it that there's really an ROI on working with a consultant? Do you, in your examples, Will, you gave some examples of saving a significant amount of working capital or whatever, but when is it financially makes sense to have somebody with this kind of expertise, and whether you hire an outside consultant or bring somebody on staff? What is that? Can you each talk about maybe how you would think about adding expertise like this to your organization?
I can start. Question, because it deeps so much. You as the brand or company owner, and whoever else your business partners are, capabilities are, will determine how much you can do, even if you don't have any actual food manufacturing experience. I've seen two-person owners of a company take products, have them produced at co-manufacturers, um, and I've seen them make mistakes as well that got them into trouble in regards to keeping their supply and going. and from their co-manufacturers, and therefore keeping their retailers happy. And those are big mistakes, because when you lose distribution as a small company, it can really set you back and really hurt. So I think a while back, you don't know what you don't know, and if you take a good inventory of what you don't know, it help you determine whether you need a consultant in certain areas. And I'm sure Will can talk to the level of consultancy that they can provide in order, or companies like him, in order to get you over some, not necessarily handing over the whole product supply or co-manufacturing to a consultant, but just little pieces to make sure that you're not missing anything big. And size-wise, that's hard to say, but as you grow, certainly you want somebody that has manufacturing quality experience that you can put some good practices in place to manage that part of it.
Okay, Will, what's the benefit? Like, how does this? At what point does it make sense for somebody to engage you, maybe, or a consultant like you? How early in that, and then and when does that make sense to say, hey, really, you should have this capability in house? So can you talk about like how you work with people and how they might think about working with a consultant that it makes financial sense for them?
Yeah, I mean, we have two business models for us. One is the a la carte business, which is, hey, I need help with specifications. I need a recall program. I need a vendor approval program. It's, I need help setting up. How do I even manage my supply chain? It's, hey, can you help me negotiate my contract with a co-man? That side of the business, the a la carte side, most people, when they're startups, hire us for the sourcing the co-man, more importantly, negotiating their contract with a co-man to cover standard and customary things. That's where the majority of their focus comes in. And then right after they do their first line trial, they tend to come over and say, we need to develop our specifications to make sure we're getting the same product that we ask for every time. Those two areas are primarily focused around smaller companies just starting up with a co-man. And all in solution, what we do is generally that's people who are anywhere $5,750,000, and we take them to about 20 million. And the way that we look at that is all of our guys are hourly. We have a cap per month that we charge them, so they don't wind up with some crazy bill. But you start seeing what it is that people's time is being spent on, and the tipping point for a full-time equivalent. We have two clients who rolled off the program recently that we went to, and we're like, you're having a person work 30 hours a week, 25 hours a week on this particular area. If you take this and you merge it in with the purchasing manager job, it's enough for a full-time person. So you need to roll us off of it, and we stayed on for part. Quality food safety for a lot of these companies, until they get to a multi-site system, multi-site business, it never really pays for them to have their own quality and food safety team, because they're relying on their co-packer for most of that, and they just need somebody to monitor compliance with their co-packer. So that business, when you get to the size of like Rhythm, where you have multiple producers in multiple countries, you would have us roll off and then put a permanent quality person who's assessing at all facilities all the time. But generally, that's about the $20 million point.
Great, thanks. Well, we're at an hour. Thank you very much to Joe Golembeski and Will Madden. Great content. Thanks a lot to PetAge for helping us promote this and get the word out. This webinar, the slides for both Joe and Will, as well as a recording of this webinar, will be available on the petcareinnovationprize.com website, if I can get it out. Starting probably be there Friday, July 14th, and you're welcome to share it with anybody else. Speaking of the Pet Care Innovation Prize, we closed the 2017 Pet Care Innovation Prize window on August 4th, and we offer $10,000 cash prize that is no equity. There's no dilution in your company. You don't have to give any preferential rights away. You don't have to give any IP away. We're looking to recognize pet care innovators, and we bring them together with some experts, do some training and networking, and help them meet some resources like the people that you're hearing today, and then help them get some visibility to grow. You can learn more about it at Pet Care Innovation Prize. Make sure you also check out PetAge at petage.com. Will and Joe, thank you very much for your time. Joe, I know that you don't take outside clients, but people can learn more about Nestle Purina Pet Care at the website, and the work that you guys do. You guys do a lot of great work. Our finalists that get to come to St. Louis and see your operation get to see some amazing resources. And Will, Whole Brain Consulting, people can reach you through your website or buy your book, I'm assuming, right?
Yep, anytime.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And everybody take care and have an awesome day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Dan, thank you.
Thank you.